Life is a game and Alan Watts knew exactly how to win it. Imagine this. You wake up tomorrow morning and everything's different. The sky is still blue, the air still moves, people still walk around doing their thing, but something shifted. You've realized that life isn't this serious, linear, high-stakes mission you thought it was. It's not a test. It's not a ladder. It's not even a journey in the traditional sense. It's a game. And not just metaphorically a real game, with rules, illusions, playstyles, and levels of awareness. And the moment you realize that, truly feel it, you no longer live the same way. Your decisions shift. Your fears shrink. Your ambitions evolve. And this is where Alan Watts enters the scene not as a guru, but as a fellow player who simply figured out how to enjoy the game without getting lost in it. Because Watts didn't teach us how to win by dominating others. He taught us how to win by remembering this. The point of playing is not to win, it's to play. That's a dangerous idea in a world obsessed with progress. We're raised to think life is about getting somewhere. From kindergarten to graduation, from your first job to the corner office, from dating to marriage to retirement, it's all treated like a sequence of goals. But Watts asked something radically different. What if all that is a cosmic joke? What if we've mistaken the map for the territory, the music for the end note? What if, in our pursuit to make something of our lives, we've forgotten that life itself is already complete in every moment? Alan Watts flipped the script. He said, life is not a problem to be solved, but an experience to be had. And the moment you internalize that, everything changes. Let's break this down. If life is a game, what kind of game are we playing? It's not one with a scoreboard that makes sense. The richest aren't the happiest. The busiest aren't the most fulfilled. The most famous often suffer the most. So clearly, it's not a game of who accumulates the most. It's a game of awareness, of conscious participation. The people who seem most alive aren't the ones who have everything, they're the ones who realize they don't need everything to enjoy what they already have. They're immersed. They're playing. Watts would say, you are a function of what the whole universe is doing in the same way that a wave is a function of what the whole ocean is doing. In other words, you're not separate from the game, you are the game, playing itself.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
So why do we suffer so much? Why do we overthink, stress, chase, and spiral into exhaustion and doubt? Because we forget that it's a game. We start taking the characters too seriously. We believe the costumes are real. We identify so deeply with the role we're playing, student, parent, entrepreneur, influencer, whatever that, we forget we were never those things in the first place. We are the player, not the character. And when the player forgets they're playing, the game becomes terrifying. Every failure feels permanent. Every rejection feels fatal. Every mistake becomes a curse. But when you remember it's a game, you start to laugh more. You make moves, you take risks, you try things not because you're trying to win at life, but because you realize the act of playing is the reward. Here's the question Alan Watts would sneak into your soul. Why are you doing what you're doing? Is it because you think it'll get you somewhere, or because it's beautiful to do? He used music as a metaphor. When you listen to a symphony, you don't skip to the final chord. You don't fast forward to the end. The point is to listen all the way through, to dance with the melody, to play. But we treat life like it's a bad movie we're trying to finish as quickly as possible. That's the tragedy, and it's self-inflicted. So how do we win the game of life, according to Alan Watts? We win by realizing there's nothing to win. There's only to wake up, participate fully, and enjoy the process. That doesn't mean you give up ambition or goals. It means you stop clinging to them as if they define your worth. It means you can still build, strive, explore, but from a place of joy, not desperation. You stop chasing meaning and start creating it. You stop trying to be someone and start being what you are this moment, unfolding, aware, alive. And yes, this mindset is hard, because everything around you is built to make you forget it. Schools teach you to perform. Jobs teach you to compete. Social media teaches you to compare. But Watts didn't say, Go live on a mountain and meditate 12 hours a day. He said, wake up in the world, dance with the illusion, play inside the dream. You can be a business person, a parent, a student, a scientist, it doesn't matter. You just remember it's a role. And when you remember it's a role, you don't cling so tightly. You don't fear so deeply. You don't lose yourself in the costume. Let's pause here and ask a question that might break the simulation. What would it mean to live without needing to become anything else? What would it feel like to let go of the chase and simply be, right now, without needing to justify your existence? That's not laziness. That's liberation. It's the kind of radical freedom that can't be marketed, can't be taught in school, and can't be bought, only discovered. And that's what Watts wanted you to find. Not a system, not a solution, but a shift. Because once you make that shift, the game opens up. You start seeing beauty everywhere. You stop being afraid of failure. You take bigger risks, not for gain, but for expression. You stop trying to solve life and start dancing with it. You realize, finally, that the game was never about winning. It was always about remembering who you are. The player, the reamer, the wave, the music, not separate from the game, but one with it. The cosmic hide-and-seek. Why you forgot you were playing. It might sound strange, even absurd, but Alan Watts believed that the entire universe is playing a game of hide-and-seek with itself. And you right now, watching this, thinking your thoughts, carrying your memories, your wounds, your dreams, you are not the final player. You are the disguise, the mask, the temporary forgetting of something infinite. Watts often said, you are the universe experiencing itself. But here's the twist. In order to experience itself fully, the universe had to forget what it was. It had to pretend. It had to hide. Because if you knew with full clarity that you were everything eternal, boundless, unbreakable, then where would the fun be? Where would the surprise be? What meaning would joy or sorrow hold if you already knew the outcome? That's the core of the game. Consciousness hides from itself to experience the thrill of remembering. And the forgetting? That's your life. That's your suffering, your confusion, your striving. The pain of being lost isn't a mistake, it's part of the play. It's like a child covering their own eyes and pretending they can't see. It's not ignorance, it's exploration. But the problem is, we've forgotten that we forgot. We got so deep into the game that we started to believe the character we're playing is all we are. We mistook the mask for the face. And then life got heavy. It started to feel like a burden instead of a dance. We started asking, what's the point of all this? But Watts would smile and say, that question is the point. Think about it. If you were God or the universe or the infinite field of consciousness, whatever you want to call it, what would you do with eternity? You've already seen all the stars, created every possible world. Eventually, you'd get bored. So you'd create a game. You'd break yourself into pieces. You'd forget who you were. You'd shrink into a skull, give yourself a name, a story, a time limit. You'd set the stage for drama, for fear, for love, for loss. Not because you're cruel or foolish, but because you want to feel. You want to know what it's like to not know. That's us. That's this. And when you start to remember that, even a little, the heaviness starts to lift. You begin to sense the edges of the illusion, not to escape it, but to enjoy it more fully. But here's the trap. We think awakening is a destination. We think it's some final level we reach when we've done enough yoga, read enough books, meditated enough hours. But Watts flips that idea on its head. He says awakening is not a goal, it's a joke. A cosmic punchline. The moment you realize you've been trying to become what you already are, you laugh. Because the whole time, the seeker was the sought. The wave was already the ocean. The game was already won the moment you started playing. So why don't we all wake up right now? Why doesn't this truth hit everyone like lightning? Because the illusion isn't just mental, it's emotional. We're attached to it. We like being the character. We identify with the struggle. It gives us something to hold on to. Even our suffering becomes part of the identity. And letting go of that feels like death. But it's not death, it's a return, a homecoming, not to something outside of you, but to the deepest part within you. The part that remembers this is all a dream, but plays it anyway. Plays it with heart, with curiosity, with wonder. Here's a question that might change everything. If you knew, beyond all doubt, that you were the dreamer of this life, how would you live? Would you still worry about how you're perceived? Would you still chase things just to prove your worth? Or would you start to play with more freedom, more mischief, more joy? That's the invitation Alan Watts offers, not to transcend life, but to re-enter it with new eyes. To play, knowing you're playing. To feel, knowing it's safe. To love, knowing nothing real is ever lost. And this is where philosophy meets fire. Because once you begin to feel what Watts was saying, not just understand it intellectually, but viscerally, it flips your entire experience. The fear of failure becomes less paralyzing. The pain of loss becomes less permanent. Even the great existential questions, why am I here? What happens when I die? Become less burdensome. Not because you have all the answers, but because you realize the questions were part of the game too. They were part of the forgetting. And now you're starting to remember. So don't rush this. Don't try to awaken like it's a goal on your checklist. Just start by noticing the play. Notice the way life dances with itself through you. Notice the absurdity, the beauty, the rhythm. And when you find yourself caught in fear or doubt, ask, what if this is just the universe playing hide and seek? And what if you're about to be found? The dance of opposites, how to stop resisting and start flowing. There's a rhythm to this game of life. And we rarely notice it because we're too busy trying to control it. We want the highs, not the lows. We chase success and avoid failure. We praise joy and run from pain. But Alan Watts taught that life doesn't work that way. It never did. Life is not a straight line, it's a dance of opposites, light and dark, up and down, order and chaos, creation and destruction. You can't have one without the other. They define each other. And when we resist one half of the dance, we lose the whole thing. We freeze. We suffer. Because we're trying to flow through life while rejecting half of what life is. The irony is that most of our suffering doesn't come from pain itself, it comes from our resistance to pain. We get sad, and then we get anxious about being sad. We fail, and then we spiral into shame about failing. We feel fear, and then we judge ourselves for not being strong enough. This second layer, the resistance, is what suffocates us. And Watts, with that signature wit and clarity, would say, stop trying to fix the wave. Read it. Because when you resist the natural motion of life, you don't escape suffering, you amplify it. But when you flow with it, something strange happens. Even pain becomes beautiful. Even fear becomes sacred. Not because it's fun, but because it's real and you're finally present for it. So let's go deeper. Why do we resist? Why do we cling to the good and fight the bad? Because we've been conditioned to believe that success equals having only the positive half of life. We think happiness means the absence of sadness. That peace means the absence of conflict. But look at nature. There is no flower without decay, no sunrise without night, no inhale without exhale. Watts called this the principle of polarity. Everything exists in relation to its opposite. And life flows when we accept that. Not tolerate it, not endure it, embrace it. That's what it means to flow. Not to control the current, but to move with it. Here's an uncomfortable truth. The more you try to force only positive experiences, the more you suffer. Because in trying to avoid half of reality, you become split. You stop living fully. You start playing defense. And you become rigid mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Watts used the metaphor of water. It's soft, but it's unstoppable. It yields, but it carves mountains. It adapts. It flows. And that's how we're meant to live. Not stiff with control, but fluid with surrender. Not passive responsive. Open, awake, ready for whatever comes, not because you know the outcome, but because you trust the rhythm. And this isn't just poetry, it's practical. When you stop resisting, your anxiety starts to dissolve. When you accept the fear, it loses its grip. When you allow sadness, it moves through you instead of getting stuck. Life becomes lighter, not because it's easier, but because you're no longer carrying the weight of resistance. You're no longer bracing for impact. You're dancing with it. And that's a radical shift. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough to let things be what they are, instead of constantly demanding they be something else. Think about this. What would your life look like if you stopped resisting your current experience? Not forever, just for this moment. What if you let the discomfort in, not as an enemy, but as a guest? What if you stopped trying to fix yourself and simply witnessed yourself right now, exactly as you are? That's not giving up. That's waking up. That's what flow feels like. It's not always pleasant, but it's always real, always alive. And that's worth more than any illusion of control. Watts didn't tell us to detach from life. He told us to dive into it, all of it. The beauty, the terror, the absurdity. He showed us that opposites don't cancel each other out, they complete each other. And when you learn to see that, you stop fighting reality. You stop trying to make life safe, and instead, you make yourself open, vulnerable, receptive, not to chaos, but to truth. And the truth is, life isn't here to be perfect. It's here to be played, fully. And that means dancing with the dark as much as the light. So when the next wave hits, when things fall apart, when fear grips your chest, when the plan breaks, don't freeze, don't resist. Don't collapse into stories about how it shouldn't be happening. Instead, try this. Take a breath, let go of the script, and move with it, feel it, flow with it. And then ask yourself, what would it mean to trust the dance even here, even now? The final level, how to play this life like you already won. If life is a game and you're the player, then here's the wildest realization of all. You've already won. Not because you've achieved everything, not because you've unlocked some secret success code, but because the game was never about winning in the first place. The moment you were born, no, the moment you became aware, you were already in the final level. The real win isn't at the end, it's right here, in this breath, in this moment. The prize is the play itself. Alan Watts understood this better than almost anyone. He didn't try to escape life. He dove into it with laughter, music, paradox, and presence. And what he left behind is a message that can rewire your entire relationship with existence. Stop chasing the win. Start playing like you already have it. Most of us live like we're still trying to earn our right to exist. We think we'll finally be enough when we reach a certain point, when we get the degree, the job, the partner, the followers, the peace, the enlightenment. But that mindset keeps moving the finish line. You never arrive. You just keep sprinting. And the tragedy is, you miss the scenery. You miss the moments. You miss yourself. Watts would call this the trap of becoming. Always trying to become something, instead of realizing you are already something. Not in a superficial way. Not in a just love yourself cliché, but in a deep existential sense. You are the universe, disguised as a human, playing a game of pretend, and you've forgotten that you made the rules. So what does it mean to live like you've already won? It means you stop measuring your life by outcomes and start measuring it by aliveness. Did I feel today? Did I participate? Did I laugh, cry, connect, wonder? Did I wake up for even a second and marvel at the absurdity and beauty of this whole thing? That's the only scoreboard that matters. Because when you live from that place, you start making bolder choices. You stop hesitating. You stop playing defense. You take the risk. You say the thing. You follow the curiosity. Not because you know how it'll turn out, but because you don't. That's the thrill. That's the gift. There's this idea Watts loved. You can't have a game without losing. If no one could lose, there'd be no tension, no drama, no meaning. So when you experience setbacks, heartbreak, failure, don't see them as evidence that you're losing. See them as proof that you're playing. You're in it. You're alive. And you're brave enough to keep showing up even when it's uncertain. That's not weakness. That's mastery. Because the final level isn't about control. It's about surrender. It's about trusting that life is wiser than your plans, and that sometimes the detour is the destination. Let me ask you something that could flip your whole perspective. What would you do differently today if you knew you'd already won the game of life? Would you still stress about being behind? Would you still compare yourself to others? Or would you finally give yourself permission to be here fully, unapologetically, wildly present? That's the move. That's the cheat code. You live like you've already won, and suddenly everything becomes play again. The pressure lifts, the fear softens, and joy starts to sneak in through the cracks. Alan Watts didn't give us a formula. He gave us a mirror, a way to see ourselves not as broken seekers crawling toward meaning, but as divine players who are the meaning. And when you realize that, you stop asking life what it owes you. You start asking, what can I give to the game? How can I enrich the play, deepen the dance, light up the next moment, not because I should, but because I can? So here we are, the final level. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're not late. You're just remembering. And that remembering is the beginning of everything. There's nothing left to prove, nothing you need to fix, just one question worth living every day. How joyfully, how vividly, how truthfully can I play this life knowing I've already won? Now go, play.